luck, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed your lunch, which are kindly all paid for by our wonderful sponsors. Hence, we have another one, Samit, to talk about Remo 3. We are about 15 minutes behind on the agenda, so we might squeeze the roundtable a little bit at the end so we can still finish on time. But hopefully you can hang around for that. They're really good conversations to have. And obviously we've got drinks at the end as well. Please keep filling in your feedback forms, even if they're slightly rejigged in order. There is a bottle of champagne for somebody at the end. So over to that. Thank you, Samit.
Thank you, Neil. So, Samit Halvadia, for those of you that don't know me, I am CTO of Remo 3, but this is meant to be a community session, so it's not about Remo 3. What I did want to kind of just... Hey, you got to talk to Brad. You got to talk to your boy Roland, you know? That's the only way I have my name. I don't have it by myself. You know, I've got this shirt on. Don't worry about it. So just so you guys are aware, my background is very much app-centric. And I think this is a good dovetail into what Nigel and Steve were talking about in terms of legacy applications. So a little bit about myself. I think I've worked with quite a few of you, if I've had the pleasure of doing that. But for those of you that don't know me, 20 years in the app space, started out as a product manager for Install Shield and Admin Studio. Eventually went over to AppDNA, started North America around AppDNA, where we eventually sold to Citrix, where I ran worldwide pre-sale strategy and continued trying to do all things apps at Citrix until they sunset AppDNA, and the app problem was not solved yet. So I thought, well, let's try it again here. So today, kind of what I want to talk about is this concept that everyone's been kind of focusing on, which is the shift from or to and. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Microsoft, right? Microsoft has brought what has historically been Windows 365 or AVD under singular leadership, and they've embraced this concept of and, right? It's meeting the customer where they are and what they need. So I started thinking about this concept of and how many of you listen to Tim Ferriss? Does anyone listen to that pod? Well, just one Brit, that's it? Oh, okay, we got a couple. Well, I heard an interesting podcast on Tim Ferriss where he had a doctor on, and he was talking about the concept of the evolution of medicine. And the concept was there was health 1.0, which was anything before the 17th century, where it was basically, we're going to put leeches on you, hope that it works, we're going to drill a hole in your head, hope that the demons come out. You know, whatever it is, it was not based in science. It was kind of a spray and pray type of routine. And that's really where apps in the legacy sense were. When Nigel was talking about things that were running on 3.1 with the back end, when you're talking about applications that you have no visibility into and that you have no idea what's going to happen when you actually click on the go button or deploy button, that's apps 1.0. And then we talk about this concept of medicine 2.0 or health 2.0. And that's a slightly more interesting one, right? There's different variances on that, but Sir Francis Bacon in the 17th century came up with the scientific method. And he said, let's get some visibility. Let's put some foundational structure behind proving why things are happening, why we're solving these problems. And we're still in the throes of health 2.0, which has been great for us because it's increased longevity, it's really made leaps and bounds in pharmacology, but we're addressing these problems as and when they're coming, right? Vaccinations being a perfect example. As soon as people start getting sick and we see a virus starting to spread, we create a vaccine. As soon as someone gets diabetes, you have a solution for that, right? But it's really around facing these problems as and when they're coming. It's very based on treating symptoms. And apps 2.0, whether you believe in the SaaS model and everyone's going to move to SaaS, I heard somebody say that a little bit earlier, jokingly, obviously. But Apps 2.0 is kind of where we are today, right? After MSI, we now had the ability to look into applications. Now, we started delivering them at scale on Windows XP using Config Manager. Then, people wanted more flexibility. They wanted to create task sequences. They wanted to be able to map dependencies. They wanted to be able to tailor the environments in a way that makes sense for the environment, regardless of the fact that they're not thinking 10 years ahead. When you now go into someone's config manager environment, they don't want to touch it. They don't know what's in there. To the earlier session's point, 20 years ago, a developer created an application. We don't know what it does. We don't know exactly what it's meant to do, but I do know I don't want to be responsible. Bless you. I do know that I don't want to be responsible for being the person that breaks it, right? And along those lines, we saw parts of that journey where we deprecated 16-bit components. We saw that we actually needed to worry about application compatibility as we moved to Windows 7. We had to start thinking about 64-bit components. And then all of a sudden, there's application compatibility. We had to start thinking about isolation, AppV, ThinApp. You started looking at, but these are all point solutions that happened over the course of the last 20 years as you start trying to solve this app problem. And there was always an or. I'm using AppV, or I'm using MSI, or I'm using ThinApp, right? It was never a heterogeneous, I'm going to meet you where you are, right? Steve had a slide up a little bit earlier where there were, how do you solve this problem as you start moving forward? Is it Windows native? Is it third-party containers? What is it, right? And the answer is, it's all of it, right? The problem is big enough where you can embrace all of those different options. So that leads me to kind of Health 3.0, right? The concept behind Health 3.0 is now you have the ability to use personal devices, collect metrics around your markers. You can look at things around correlation, LP(a), what does it mean for neurodegenerative disease? What are all these different things that you're able to measure and theoretically create a preventative causation measure, where you're now looking at saying, okay, we have 25 years of data that says, you know what? Exercise could theoretically help prevent dementia, reduce the risk of dementia by 25% if you stay within your VO2 max 3 times a week, whatever it might be, right? But these are all markers around prevention that now exist. But that doesn't mean apps 2.0 go away. That doesn't mean AppV goes away. Right? That doesn't mean you stop taking medicine if you get sick. What you're trying to do is extend the longevity of your health span, and that's exactly what we want to do with the applications. We want to extend the longevity of the app span. And the only way to really start doing that is by embracing this concept of and. So the good news is that the old school closed systems are slowly going away, right? You look at Intune when it first came out. Jim, what file formats did Intune support?
.intune, .msx, .msi, whatever you like.
And .appx, right? But what happens to all the rest of the stuff that was coming over from SCCM? They were still valid applications. They still functioned just fine, but you were not able to bring them into a modern management plane. That's changing, right? You're looking at the stuff that Jim's working on, supporting Win32 applications, supporting all different types of app formats, so we can ultimately meet the customer where they are on their journey. The same application can be delivered in different ways depending on the user, right? The same application could be delivered as an AppV or as an MSIX or as a local MSI, depending on what the use case or need for that particular customer or user profile looks like. And really what that provides for us is this concept of and choice. So most enterprises that we're working with right now are not going to go ahead and say, I'm fully in on MSIX, or I'm fully in on App Volumes, or I'm fully in on FlexApp 1. They're great technologies. And I actually believe that, with this embracing of that's one of the things that we're looking to do is give those customers the choice to decide how to best deliver their applications, how to best modernize those applications. So the work that we've done with Microsoft around the MSIX team, but also just in general around app volumes and work we're doing with the Liquidware team, it's all about giving folks the opportunity to make that decision on how to best deliver that app, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't introduce complexity at the same time. Now, Scott Manchester uses these two diametrically opposing ideas around why Windows 365 and AVD are such good partners. You've got AVD, which gives you granularity. It requires subject matter expertise, but he uses the word any when you start describing AVD, right? You can do any configuration. You have all sorts of abilities when it comes to going down cost management, host pool management, all of those good things. And then on the other side of it, which is great for the user and the IT staff where you have cost control. But you have the other side, which is Windows 365. He calls that zero. Zero trust, zero lift. Everything is meant to be simple, right? And together, they're still providing a complete solution for his existing customer base. And that's exactly what we're looking to do, except without the OS delivery and workspace delivery. The idea is someone needs to help with our partners here to be able to do it in the app delivery space. So when I start kind of talking about this concept of freedom, right, it does allow you to have a great user experience and time to value. In fact, working with some of our partners, one of the things that we've seen is that, I do want to move to AVD, but I don't want to be in a proof of concept for 15 months. Can you just help me get my applications out of Config Manager, into Nerdio, into Intune, and then ultimately deploy them, or Azure Resource Manager, and then deploy them into AVD or Windows 365? Can you just do that? I don't want them repackaged. I don't want them anything. I just want them tested. I want to know if they work. Can you clean it up and send it over? And that's okay, right? You still have the ability to, in parallel, modernize those applications and containerize those applications and still take on some of the reduction in overhead that's associated with that management. So as we start kind of thinking about this concept of what we're looking to help the entire application lifecycle management cycle with is saying, you know what? We're going to give you the ability to deploy in any way you want, even if it's the same app that you've had for the last 20 years. As long as it's secure, as long as it works on a modern workspace, send it. I'm okay with that, right? But in the meantime, so you can start realizing that time to value, and you can start taking advantage of that, deployment type. But in the meantime, if you want to work in parallel with your partner community and some of the other technology alliances, you have the ability to still modernize those applications. You have the ability to still look at alternative technologies to extend the longevity of those applications. And typically, when you start hearing what I'm saying, you're saying, well, do I really want to deploy the same application in 8 different ways? Do I want 12 different package types for 7 different deployments? And the answer is maybe, right? It does introduce complexity, but there is a way around complexity, and that's by leveraging automation. If you can leverage automation to do all of the boring stuff for you, to automate the testing to make sure that that application's validated so it'll work on that workspace, to automate the conversion to ensure that it is a good candidate for a modern application format, to automate the change management. Every time I make a change to that operating environment or workspace, am I going to ensure that that application portfolio will still work? That happy medium is going to differ from organization to organization based on a couple of things: subject matter expertise, complexity of the application estate, as well as the investment in automation. So ultimately, if we do find that balance, right, that balance is based around figuring out, hey, what's most important to me? Is it the time to value of being able to get my applications onto my new modern workspace? Is it around extending the longevity of my app? Is it around creating the most secure deployment methodology possible? Those are levers that each of you get to pull with customers and with partners to be able to start making those decisions so that you can create an individualized plan for each of those deployments. For us, what we've seen is that it comes in all different shapes and sizes. Some folks are just set on having one single app format, and I can tell you, who has only one app format that they deployed to over 10,000 seats? It just doesn't exist. So the concept around embracing that complexity and embracing that choice by leveraging some of the things that we've been working on with Microsoft as well as with some of the other partner community, there is a happy medium where you can actually say, I can take all of this complexity, I can bring automation to the table, and ultimately enable choice for my customers. So the goal for me today was to just introduce this concept of and let people know that just because you have 12 different app formats doesn't mean it's the end of the world. That could actually be a really good thing in order to ensure that you're getting your apps to your modern workspaces as quickly as possible. Now, of course, in parallel, you can work on continuing to streamline that overall process, but ultimately the goal for me around app delivery is mimicking what Microsoft is trying to do with AVD and Windows 365. I want to have a great user experience by enabling choice, and I want to have a great IT admin experience by bringing automation to the table. Any questions around that? Jim, I don't want to hear about this. But any questions? All right, Neil, I'm trying to get you back on time. Oh, wait, we've got one.
What's the most applications you've seen with the customer? Biggest number?
What's the largest number of applications? So the largest one that I've seen that we've had to actually roll our sleeves up and get involved in was like 17,000. It's a lot.
Thank you. And you guys are outside, so
We are.
happy to answer any further questions at your booth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.